Nestling in the beautiful Balquhidder Glen next to a stunning waterfall of the Kirkton Burn is a church steeped in history. This is the Balquhidder Parish Church, and within its walls and its locality there are a number of curious stones, and it's these stones, their stories and their mysteries that I have come to look at today. The building of the present church was commissioned by a local laird called David Carnegie, who employed, among others, the prominent Victorian architect David Bryce for the task. The building of the church was completed in 1855 and it's part of the wider Church of Scotland. But the current Kirk is not the only church to have been built on this site. Outside are the ruins of an earlier church building which dates from 1631 and was built by Lord David Murray. What remains of this church now sits beautifully complemented by greenery in amongst these hills. I love the fact that there are yew trees growing within the ruins of this old church. It definitely adds something to the atmosphere of the place and gives an indication of just how much time has passed since this church has been in use. Within the walls of the 1631 church are laid to rest a number of MacLarens. According to the church booklet, the MacLarens were the first people in the glen whose name is known. The booklet states that it was an ancestor of the MacLarens who built an even earlier church here, and as such, the MacLaren chiefs have the right of burial within these walls. In this peaceful place, amongst the headstones going back generations, there can be found the burial place of one of Scotland's most famous folk heroes, Rob Roy MacGregor. Born in 1671, Rob was a Scottish Highlander and Jacobite who became famous as an outlaw and a Robin Hood figure. Once a respected cattle dealer, he fell into debt after his associate made off with the money that had been entrusted to him as part of a business deal with the Duke of Montrose. A warrant for Rob's arrest was issued, and despite attempts to clear his name, Rob found himself on the run after the Duke's men destroyed his home, took his land, and severely mistreated his family. Rob became known for raiding and standing up to the powerful, and this made him a champion of the common folk. Though he was captured a few times, he was eventually pardoned and lived out his final years in this parish, where he died in 1734. His life story became legendary, inspiring books, songs, and films. And as his reputation grew and time passed on, it also inspired another story, which gave this rock its current name. Stone putting is a traditional heavy athletics event most famously associated with the Scottish Highland Games. Instead of a metal shot ball used in modern shot put, stone putting traditionally uses an ordinary rounded heavy stone or rock. The object of the game is to putt or throw the stone as far as possible from a designated throwing area. This huge and rather lovely boulder sits way above the tree line near the top of Kirkton Glen and can be reached via a path north of the church. Here you can see just how huge this boulder is. There's me. And there's my husband standing next to it. As large as it is, however, it possesses the name of Rob Roy's putting stone. The sheer size of this rock is a testament to Rob's reputation in the minds of the local community. In essence, the legend of Rob Roy's putting stone transforms him from merely a historical figure into a folk hero. It tells us that regardless of his documented actions, within this locality he was remembered not just as a cattle rustler or a feuding chief, but as a man of formidable power and skill, worthy of awe and the subject of enduring tales. Laying on top of Rob Roy's grave is a very curious grave slab. When I first saw it, I thought it depicted Rob, until I realised that it appeared to be only a part of a much larger carved slab now broken. I could find hardly any information on this at all. And the church booklet merely states that his stone, along with those of his wife and son either side of him, are believed to be much earlier. On it are carved a sword and a man, and there's what appears to be a kind of knotwork, and perhaps even evidence of an earlier carving now very worn away. Although it's not known for certain how old this stone is, there's some suggestions that it could be from as early as the 11th century. Now, we know that the current church was built in 1855, and that these ruins are of the previous church built in 1631, but there's also apparently evidence of the earlier church built by Abbot Lauren, the ancestor of Clan MacLaren. And according to my research, Rob's grave is situated where that small church would have partly stood. These stones here look a little bit like they could be the foundations for that church. What do you guys think? Inside is another curious grave slab. This is known as the Angus stone, and the church booklet records that it's believed it once lay over the grave of a man called Angus. And the location for this is actually outside amongst those foundations that we were very likely just looking at. Angus, now more commonly known as St. Angus of Balquhidder, is believed to have been the one who first brought the Christian faith to this glen. It's not known exactly when Angus arrived, but it's thought it was around the 7th to 8th centuries, and that he preached the gospel to them not far from where the church now stands. In his hands he holds a chalice, which represents the cup of salvation. This cup, used in the Eucharist, also known as Holy Communion, directly refers to the cup Jesus shared with his disciples at the Last Supper. The Gospels record that Jesus stated that this cup represented the new covenant in his blood, which is poured out for the many for the forgiveness of sins. The Gospels go on to record that shortly after this, Jesus' blood was poured out on the cross. The Lord's Supper has been remembered in churches throughout the entire history of the church all over the world, and is still remembered today. Here, Angus appears to be dressed in ecclesiastical attire, that of a priest, and he's holding the chalice, which not only represents his leadership in worship, but also the message that he brought to the people of Balquhidder. When the early church building on this site was dismantled, the Angus stone was moved and incorporated into the 1631 church, where it remained for 141 years until a reverend, disliking the presence of the stone inside, had it placed back outside where it had come from, and it was exposed to the elements. This is why some of it is now no longer there. It actually looks like there's something curved at the bottom here. So there's like this kind of ridge that sort of comes down here, starts there, but it's got this curved pattern on it. So I wonder whether at some point there may well have been an inscription or something there that's clearly been lost now. And in typical inquisitive Jenna fashion, that's not all my mind goes to. If this stone did indeed lay on the top of the grave of St. Angus, then it's entirely possible that St. Angus and I are the same height, because I am the same height as this stone, if you don't include the block at the bottom there. One thing is definitely certain, he's definitely not taller than me. Don't adjust your phones or TV sets, you did hear me correctly. I did indeed just refer to Angus in the present tense, but in my defence, he's a saint, right? So clearly he's currently feasting and drinking in the halls of heaven. So yeah, cheers. Have one for me, Angus. In September of 1917, the Angus stone was brought into this church to be placed where it now stands. On that exact same day, another stone was also brought inside. This simple carved stone was once part of the masonry that was used to build the 1631 church. When those walls were being dismantled, it was discovered already hollowed out, and a decision was made to erect it as the baptismal font. It's unknown whether this stone was originally carved by Christians or if it predates Christianity. Holes on either side of the bowl suggest that possibly, at some point, it had a cover attached. And the archaeologists apparently can't date it, so if there's anyone out there that thinks they can, let me know in the comments below. Either way, I think it adds quite an interesting addition to this church. What do you guys think? And there's so much more here to discover. I've literally only just scratched the surface. I'm here this morning at the end of almost 2 weeks in Scotland and we haven't had any rain at all. So this waterfall behind me right now is actually quite small in comparison to what it could be like. And either way, it's absolutely stunning, but I can imagine when it's been raining, it can be quite ferocious. And you can see by all the exposed rocks just how crazy this waterfall can get. Right, that brings us to the end of my adventure, for now anyway. If you're new here and you've enjoyed this video, give it a like, come say hi in the comments and hit that subscribe button. There are plenty more adventures to come. See you next time.